So I want to review some of the basics of reflection and talk to you about how to draw ray diagrams for plane mirrors. Now, this does have to do with angles a lot, this whole unit. So hopefully you have a protractor home with you. If you don't, you can go online and just search for a protractor and print it out, because since these are angles, if you scale it bigger or smaller, it will still be accurate. I would recommend you make it a little bit on the small side so that it'll fit on the diagrams we're using. So we've already talked about reflection and how we have an incident ray, which is the ray that's coming in, and it bounces out. The angle of incidence is measured from the ray to the normal, the perpendicular line, and that angle of incidence is always equal to the angle of reflection. That will always be true. And that's going to help us kind of develop some shortcuts for finding these ray diagrams in many cases. So here we have 3 examples of some rays hitting a mirror. And it asks us to trace over the incident ray in red. And the reflected ray is going to be in orange. So again, we measure to that perpendicular line. But if this is equal to that, then this will also equal that. So I'm going to measure this way because it's just a little closer. 1, 2 lines, so 2 lines out, and this is going to be my angle of reflection. So again, the ray that's already there is the angle of incident, or is the incident ray. And then here I'm 1 away from the perpendicular. So I'm going to trace back out with the reflection, 1 away from the perpendicular. And to finish up the third one, in with red and out with orange. Now I'm using colors here to kind of help us keep track of the rays, because there are going to be a lot of lines when we draw these ray diagrams. So we're always going to have the incident going in red and the reflected out in orange. If you are to observe these reflected rays, so if your eye is here, your brain assumes that light is traveling in a straight line, you would see the reflection as being behind the mirror. So when we have light that is being reflected or refracted, which we'll talk about later, there are images, which is where it appears the object is, which is different than where the object actually is. For a plane mirror, that image is always going to be behind the mirror. So if you go look at yourself in the mirror, you do say in the mirror, you appear to be behind the mirror itself, not on the surface of the mirror. And that's what this is talking about. All right, here we're going to figure out how we can draw or determine where the image of an object is in the mirror. And to do this, we are going to use the reflected ray and the law of reflection, that every incident ray reflects out at an equal angle. So we're going to need a protractor, and I'm going to use the edge of the protractor as my straight edge. I have all of these incident rays, and it asks me to draw the reflected ray for each. So I'm going to take that little shortcut, and instead of drawing the perpendicular and measuring the angle to the perpendicular, I'm going to measure this angle and make those reflected angles equal. So all of these solid lines that I just drew are the actual reflected rays from this object. But what we're going to do is trace these back behind the mirror. Can you scoot over, honey? Thank you. We're going to trace these back behind the mirror to see where they appear to have come from based on, so where would I have perceived it to be if I was standing at each of these locations. And I'm going to do that with a dotted line because the light does not actually travel behind the mirror. And as we do this, we can see that all of the dotted lines are coming together at least really close to a single point. I had to estimate that one a little bit because my protractor made it go off the page. The measurements might not be perfect. But we can see that all of the rays essentially seem to be coming from this point behind the mirror. So this would be, that point right there would be my image. Notice my image is behind the mirror and it's going to be just as far behind the mirror as the object is in front of it with a straight line. So instead of having to do all these different rays to find where that image appears, we can just drop a perpendicular from the object to the mirror and trace it behind and measure this distance, measure that far behind the mirror, and that is where my object is going to be. So from there, I can say, okay, well, if I'm over here, I would see the image here. That gives me, this is the reflected ray, and I can kind of figure out which of the infinite number of other rays I would actually be seeing at a different point. So here I have several different people all sitting in front of a mirror, and the mirror is only this big, but I extended the line out horizontally. And we want to look at which images each of these different people can see in that mirror. So to do that, the first thing that we need to do is draw the image. And we're going to take that little shortcut we talked about and say, okay, I know that my image is going to be as far behind the mirror as the object is in front of the mirror. Now I'm going to be doing images in purple for this entire unit. So if I look here, I can see that the image is about 0.7 centimeters in front of the image, or of the mirror. So I'm going to draw the image 0.7 centimeters behind the mirror. B is 1.6. So I'm going to go 1.6 back and draw in the image of B. C is 3.1. So 3.1 back gives me the image of C. D is 4 centimeters. So again, I'm making sure that I'm going perpendicularly back behind the mirror, just as far as it was in front of the mirror. And let's see, 0.5. And then F is 2.1. All right, now to see or to determine which images each of these can see, all we need to do is see where is there a reflected ray that's going to pass through the mirror. So if I look at A, can A see himself or herself? Well, the image is directly behind. So that means my reflected ray would have to go like that. Well, that reflected ray doesn't meet the mirror. So A cannot see his image. The line from A to the image of B does not cross over the mirror. So A cannot see B or C or D. But if we look at this E image, that line does cross through this. So that means this reflected ray did bounce off the mirror. So the incident ray would have been from E to the mirror, and then it bounced off at an equal angle and is able to reach A. So that means A can see E. And my ruler is not quite long enough. Let me find another one. If we look at A to F, looks like that one just kind of misses it. So that means that A is only able to see E and no one else. We can do the same thing with B. B to A doesn't cross the mirror. B to B doesn't cross the mirror. B to C doesn't. B to D doesn't. B to E does. So I know that B is going to be able to see E. And B to F also crosses over the mirror. So B will also be able to see F. And I could repeat this process for every single one of these points and be able to tell exactly who is going to be able to see who. Lastly, I want to look at how to draw a ray diagram for an object that's being viewed in a plane mirror. Now, I'm going to do this one by hand, and then I will show you how to do one using the Google, I think it's Google Sheets that I have it, where we can actually draw arrows on the computer. So hopefully that will work. But I just want to do it out by hand first so you can focus on what the lines are supposed to look like. And then in the next slide, we'll talk about how to make the computer show what you're trying to get it to see. All right, so when you are trying to draw a ray diagram for an object in a plane mirror, the first thing you need to do is draw the image. We're going to be doing all of the images for everything in purple. So again, here is my object. The image is going to be behind the mirror, just as far behind the mirror as the object was in front of the mirror. So if I look at this, the mirror to A is 3.9. So I'm going to scoot this back and go 3.9 behind the mirror. And that's going to be A. And B was that same distance, so 3.9 behind the mirror is going to be B. So I know it's the same distance. I guess I should have measured it to verify that it was completely parallel to that. And then we're going to connect those points, and the arrowhead, this is just helping me distinguish one end of the image from the other end, that arrowhead. So this is the image of A, that's the image of point B, and we do have that middle part, which is the rest of the object. But we're only going to be drawing rays for the top and the bottom of the object and image. And we have this little bullseye thing here, which is the person's eye. So this is where we are trying to see this object in the mirror. All right. So now that we have the image, we can start drawing our ray diagrams. We're going to draw a ray from the image to the eye, make it dotted when it's behind the mirror to indicate that the light didn't actually go there. And we're going to do this in green. So we're going to take this, and we're ignoring the actual object itself right now. And we have from the eye, match it up with the image, and we're going to draw a green line. Once I hit the mirror and start going behind the mirror, I'm going to make it dotted to show light is not actually passing behind the mirror. It just seems like it is to my brain. And we're going to do that for the head and the tail. All right. So that's showing these are the rays that I'm actually seeing after they've reflected off the mirror, and they appear to be coming from the image. Next, we're going to draw the rays from the object to where it's reflecting off the mirror. So we're going to go from A to where the image of A line crosses the mirror. And then B to where that image of B crosses the mirror. So this tells me the light actually goes from A to the mirror and reflects off the mirror into my eye. B hits the mirror and reflects off the mirror into my eye. This angle of incidence will equal that angle of reflection. You can double check by actually drawing a perpendicular line and measuring them here and here, or because we know that we found the object or the image correctly, that will be the true, or that will be correct. So draw the image behind the mirror, then from the eye to the image, and then object to the mirror.
The last thing that I want to show you how to do is to draw a ray diagram using the Google Slides, because this will allow us to draw lines on the computer relatively easily. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to put in an object. I'm just going to make it a little line. Now these lines don't necessarily show up too thick. They should show up. There we go. So we can change the thickness of them using this little thing up here. I'm going to change it to 3 just to make sure that we can definitely see what it is. The other thing that I'm going to do is change the ends of them. I'm going to make the top of it the bottom of it a little circle. That's just going to help us to tell those different, the top from the bottom, which you'll see why that's important when we get to some curved mirrors and lenses. All right, and then I'm going to put in my mirror here, and that's just that thin line down the middle. All right, the next thing that I want to do is draw the image itself. And I'm going to take this and I am going to copy it, because we know that the image is going to be exactly the same size, and we just need to slide it so that it's as far behind the mirror as the object was in front of it. Whoa, I thought that copied it. Oh, I didn't paste. There we go. So you can copy and then paste it, and then we're just going to take and slide that image, and just kind of hold a ruler up to your computer screen to try and get it even and the right distance behind and all that. So again, as long as I can tell that you've tried and you've got it really close, that's good. So I'm not going to take a ruler to your thing, but you should. So I'm folding a little sheet of paper to show me how far that was, and then bringing it over here. And there we go. All right, now I do want the image to be in purple, so I'm going to click on that, and over here I'm going to change the color of that to purple. The other thing is you will have an eye in your diagram when you pull it up, and the eye is going to be that little bullseye symbol. All right, so here's my object. I copied it, pasted it, and moved it to make my image on the other side of the mirror. And now I've got my eye, and I want to start doing my diagrams. Now, we can get dotted lines on this, but we can't make part of the line solid and part dotted. So I'm not going to worry about the solid and dotted part. Just make sure that you realize where the ray is behind the mirror. Light is not actually traveling there. That was the whole purpose of making that line dotted in the first place. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start drawing our lines. I'm going to make these just lines, not arrows. Technically, they are rays, and rays have arrows on them, but we're not going to worry about the direction. So I'm going to draw my line, and it's going to go from my eye to my image. And again, these lines should be in green, so I'm going to select the line color, and I'm going to make it green. That's a little thin. I'm going to change that to a 2 just to make it a little bit easier to see. And then I'm going to do another line from the eye to the top of the image. So again, we're going from the eye to the top and bottom of the image. I'm going to make that one a little darker too. All right. Then we're going to go from the object to the mirror to show where that ray originated from. So this is the line. Whoa, don't move it. Okay, this is the line that goes to the top of my image. So it must have originated from the top of the image. So I'm going to add another line in from the top of the image to the mirror. Change the color to blue. And I'm going to make it a little darker too. And then this is the ray that went to the bottom of the image. So it must have come from the bottom of the image. So one last line from the bottom of the image to the mirror and change it to blue and make it a little bit darker. So this is the ray diagram for this object being seen by this eye in this mirror. So we can see that the light goes from here to the mirror and bounces back to the eye. The eye thinks that it's coming from there. And the bottom, light goes from here to this point on the mirror and back to the eye, and the eye thinks that it's coming from here. So again, you're going to use this little, the object, the mirror, and the eye will already be on the diagram for you. You're going to use this little line button in order to make the lines. You'll get that little black plus sign. You can click on this to change the color of the line, and this to make the line a little bit darker. If you've got any questions on how to make this work, just let me know.